With the Khwarezmian Empire shattered, Genghis Khan turned his focus to the east. His greatest challenge awaited: the powerful Jin Dynasty of northern China, a sophisticated empire with vast armies and formidable cities. But could even the mighty Mongols conquer it? Or would they falter against such a mighty foe? Welcome back to Echoes of Empires, where we bring you the greatest stories of triumph and tragedy from across the ages. Today, we're diving into Episode 6, Conquering the Jin Dynasty, the Dragon's Fall. So buckle up for an epic journey through history. Men like Subjugating, who had risen through the ranks with his cunning and strategic brilliance. There was also Jib, whose keen eye for terrain and battle tactics had proved invaluable. The Jin's biggest weakness was internal strife. Political divisions among the various Jin states hampered their ability to mount a united defense against external threats. This inherent frailty is what Genghis Khan and the Mongols intended to exploit. Together with the mighty Abdai, Bachu, and the rest of their companions, these men were about to lead the Mongols into a conflict that would change history forever. When the Mongols first invaded Jin territory in 1211, they faced an uphill battle. Unlike the Khwarezmians, the Jin mounted a fierce and prolonged resistance, proving to be a much tougher adversary. Instead of a swift military victory, the Mongols faced years of brutal conflict, enduring guerrilla attacks, attritional sieges, and the hardships of disease and famine. Even as the Mongols gained ground, they suffered setbacks and casualties. Despite valiant efforts by Jin generals like Shi Liai and Yu Fei to rally resistance, the tide had turned. It was a far cry from the sweeping victories they had achieved against the Khwarezmians. But before his death, he had already secured major victories, forcing the Jin court to abandon their northern territories and retreat south. With his generals like Subjugating and Bachu continuing the war effort, the Jin faced a bleak future. By the end of his reign, the Mongols controlled most of northern China, including the once mighty capital of Zhongdu, now renamed Khanbalik. As the Jin dynasty reeled from the devastating Mongol onslaught, their fate hung precariously in the balance. With their northern territories lost and their resources stretched thin, the Jin were on the brink of collapse. The Mongol Empire, once a collection of nomadic tribes, had evolved into a vast, diverse and powerful entity spanning from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Russia. Despite the valiant efforts of their generals, the dynasty's decline was inevitable. We hope you've enjoyed this epic tale of the Mongol conquest of the Jin dynasty. If you're eager for more historical tales, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on our latest episodes. Until then, may your journey through history be filled with adventure and discovery. As their armies turned towards the setting sun, preparing to take on new challenges, the echoes of the Jin dynasty's fall served as a reminder of the battles that had shaped their destiny and propelled them to become the greatest land-based empire in history. The war with the Mongols had taken a heavy toll, fragmenting the empire and leaving it vulnerable. For the Mongols, the Jin dynasty proved to be a formidable adversary, challenging their strategies and pushing them to their limits. However, the Mongols' adaptability and strategic brilliance shone through. They learned from their defeats, refining their tactics and exploiting every Jin weakness. Years of Mongol pressure, coupled with internal Jin strife, had weakened the empire to a point of no return. Although the Mongols had dealt severe blows to the Jin forces at crucial battles like the Siege of Yan, they didn't achieve a decisive victory that ended the war swiftly. Instead, the conflict stretched on, becoming a war of attrition that tested both sides' endurance and resources. Battles like the Siege of Yan, where the Jin forces inflicted heavy losses on the Mongols, were stark reminders of the Jin's determination and prowess. However, the Mongols, relentless and determined, pursued their advantage. Under the banner of their new leader, Genghis Khan, they continued their southward march, bringing the Jin dynasty's demise ever closer. The Jin were prepared for their rival and defended their borders fiercely. However, the Mongols, under Genghis Khan's guidance, demonstrated remarkable adaptability. The last vestige of their resistance crumbled before the Mongol onslaught, marking the end of their illustrious yet turbulent reign. With the fall of the Jin, the Mongols stood triumphant, having conquered one of the most formidable opponents they had ever faced. Importantly, the Mongols maintained their focus, continuing to push southward despite suffering defeats. What was the ultimate outcome of this epic conflict? Who claimed victory? How did it shape the course of history? But before we delve into the final act of this historical drama, we want to hear from you. What has surprised you the most about the Mongol conquests so far? How do you think they managed to defeat such powerful empires? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're enjoying our series, please hit that like button to keep us motivated. Moreover, They exploited the Jin's internal divisions, allying with Jin nobles who opposed their emperor. Gradually, the Mongols' patience and strategic brilliance started to tell. One by one, Jin cities fell. The once mighty Jin dynasty was crumbling. Unable to withstand the relentless pressure of the Mongol horde, they adjusted their traditional steppe warfare tactics to the vastly different terrain and challenges presented by the Jin. Initially, the Mongols focused on the countryside, utilizing their cavalry to devastating effect and gradually isolating Jin cities. They also began studying their enemy, learning from the Jin military manuals captured during skirmishes. This study revealed the strengths and weaknesses of the Jin army, which the Mongols exploited to their advantage. Through hit-and-run tactics, they harassed the Jin forces, disrupting their supply lines and weakening their resolve. Furthermore, the Mongols realized the importance of logistics and adapted accordingly, establishing bases and stockpiling resources to sustain their campaigns. After a decade of maneuvering, uniting, and expanding his own domains, Genghis Khan had forged the Mongol tribes into a formidable force and laid low most threats around him. The Mongols, though fierce and adaptable, were up against an established power with significant resources and manpower. Despite the odds, Genghis Khan's strategic brilliance and the Mongols' willingness to learn and adapt allowed them to hold their ground and make significant progress. The stage was set for a long, arduous campaign, a test of wills and resources that would have profound implications for the future of Asia. With this victory, Genghis Khan solidified his title as the Great Conqueror, amassing wealth, resources, and knowledge that would only bolster his growing empire. As the war dragged on, the Mongols realized they needed a new strategy. What was their solution to conquer these seemingly impenetrable fortresses? How did they break the Jin's strongest defense? Realizing their siege warfare expertise was lacking, the Mongols devised a simple yet effective solution. They captured and employed Jin engineers and adapted their own siege weaponry to suit the Chinese terrain. The Mongols also learned from their adversaries, observing and emulating the Jin siege tactics. Additionally, they used psychological tactics, sending threatening messages to demoralize the defenders, and sometimes offering them advantageous deals to surrender peacefully. These methods proved effective, but the Mongols' most potent tool was patience. By laying siege to a city for months, they starved out the defenders and undermined the city's defenses until finally breaching the walls. Such was the case with Zhongdu, the Jin capital, which fell to the Mongols in 1215 after a grueling 3-year siege. The city's defeat marked a turning point in the war, draining the Jin's resources and forcing their court to flee south. But he knew that true greatness lay further east, behind the towering Great Wall of China. In the heart of the prosperous Jin Dynasty, he set his sights on the Khwarezmians, a mighty Central Asian empire that had posed a threat to the Mongols for some time. Yet despite their fierce resistance, the Khwarezmians were no match for the Mongols' superior military tactics and sheer determination. Before we dive into the heart of the Jin Dynasty, let's take a quick recap on where we left off. By 1206, the Mongol horde had smashed the Khwarezmians, scattering them across Persia. As the Mongols prepared for this monumental undertaking, Genghis assembled his finest generals. To understand this, we must delve into the rise of the Jin. The Jin dynasty was far from a typical medieval power. While politically fragmented, it possessed several advantages over the Mongols. Firstly, it had economic prosperity. The Jin controlled rich agricultural lands that provided ample resources for its large population and armies. Secondly, its military might was substantial. Despite the lack of unity, many Jin states fielded large armies equipped with advanced weaponry, especially proficient in archery and siege warfare. Thirdly, the Jin were masters of construction, evident in their grand palaces and imposing defensive structures, particularly the Great Wall of China, which symbolized their determination to resist outside invasions. But why did Genghis turn his gaze to the Jin? What made this dynasty such a formidable adversary for the Mongols? However, as history has shown, no empire is without its weaknesses. So how did the Mongols fare in their initial encounters with the Jin? How did they overcome the challenges of attacking such a seemingly invincible power? The initial Jin-Mongol clashes were a testament to the resilience of both sides. But the Mongols' greatest challenge lay not in open battle, but in the Jin's formidable cities. Despite their growing military prowess, the Mongols underestimated the tenacity of the Jin. Yet despite these challenges, the Mongols pressed on. They continued to learn from their opponents, adapting their strategies to counter the Jin's tactics. And so we reached the pivotal moment when the Jin's fate hung in the balance. By the mid-1220s, the Jin dynasty was on its last legs. The war's toll on the Mongols was significant. Despite their military successes, they suffered heavy casualties and endured hardships like disease and dwindling supplies. In 1227, Genghis Khan passed away, leaving the leadership mantle to his son, Ogadai. Though Genghis didn't live to see the complete fall of the Jin, the seeds of their demise were sown. What was the ultimate fate of the Jin dynasty? How did their story come to an end? In the face of such adversity, the Jin court made a final stand in the south, clinging to power in the once prosperous regions of their empire. In 1234, after a grueling 23 years of war, the Jin finally fell. This victory not only cemented their supremacy in Asia, but also set the stage for their westward expansion into the Middle East and Europe. Yet even in the midst of their triumph, the Mongols' insatiable appetite for conquest knew no bounds. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Echoes of Empires.